But first thing I want to talk about was gambling. Obviously, the big FBI raid that happened last Thursday. I wasn't on the show. I don't know if Stone got to talk about this. This was the biggest topic at the tail end of last week. And this is the first time that I've really got to force or have a chance to expel my opinion. And there's a lot of nuance here. There's a lot of context. There's obviously some terrible, terrible things that happened in that whole FBI raid that took out several NBA players. Chauncey Billups, Hall of Famer, took him away from his job coaching the Portland Trail Blazers. Stone, you've been known to gamble on a sporting event or a time or two, correct?
Nothing crazy, but just, here and there, just a few dollars to, if you're watching the game and you feel a certain type of way, throw a few on there. Nothing you're sweating over or anything crazy like that. But I think it can provide a little bit extra to the game. And just, if you're sitting there watching, an NBA game on a Tuesday and you aren't a fan of either team, like, it just provides a little bit more, I would say.
Yeah, and I'm with you there. And I think that's the biggest part. And the reason that we are going to continue to see sports and sports betting companies continue to but continue to cooperate and work together is that, one, sports gambling companies realize that there's a lot of money in this vice. There's a lot of money in people wanting to take some action. People for 2,000 plus years have loved to gamble, and probably longer than that. But as long as recorded history has happened, human beings have liked to gamble. Obviously, there's some terrible things that come along with that. Addiction. For a long time, it was unregulated, so you had to work with some shady people in that regard. But human beings have always liked it. And then human beings have always liked sports. And it's pretty clear that sports, baseball, basketball, football, tennis, whatever you're betting on, whatever it is you have an interest on, those sports are growing in popularity because they're getting more eyeballs from people that want to put a little wager on it. Monday Night Football. Before sports gambling was legal, ever since sports gambling has been legal, Monday Night Football viewership has continued to increase. And I think a great reason for that is because that there is people that say, all right, well, the Chiefs are taking on, they're playing tonight. I'm going to throw a little action on the Chiefs game. Chiefs are playing the Commanders. I'm going to throw a little action on this Chiefs game, a game that you normally wouldn't watch. Regular season baseball games that you normally wouldn't watch. All of a sudden, you're throwing a little bit of action. Just as Stone said, it gets you a little more interested in it. And here's the thing about sports gambling. And we're seeing more and more and more stories that come out about guys like Terry Rozier, guys like Calvin Ridley, guys that these stories are continuing to happen, and they're going to continue to happen where you're hearing about guys, Emmanuel Clase, guys that are doing some shady things in their sports because there is now an availability that there previously wasn't to rig props, to rig games, to be on the wrong side of things when it comes to sports gambling. And the first thing you got to realize, and the knee-jerk reaction is every time that one of these things happen, is to go, well, this is why sports gambling shouldn't be legal. This shouldn't happen. And you're right, this shouldn't happen. But it already was happening. Going back to the 80 scandal with Boston College basketball, going to Pete Rose, like all these scandals, like this isn't the first time. Heck, I think the National League, I heard someone talk about this. The National League was formed in the 1870s. They had a betting scandal the next year, their second year in existence. Like, this has been going on. The reason we are hearing more and more problems come out about this is twofold. One is because it's more readily available than it ever has. We can pull up an app if you're in a legal state, and you can start betting on your stuff. And all of a sudden, if you're Terry Rozier, if you're Emmanuel Clase, if you're one of these guys, you are strongly tempted, even though Terry Rozier had made $100 million in his life. These guys make plenty of money. They have friends. They have family that can get in their ear that they love, and they go, hey, your line's 8.5 today. What if you just scored 8? And let me know. Put enough money on it. Like, those things, there's a temptation there that there hasn't been prior, because formerly you had to go to some seedy bar, you had to call up, or you had to do offshore betting online that you weren't even sure if you were going to get a check from the Cayman Islands or wherever those offshore betting sites are. That was illegal. Now it's legal. And the second reason that we're going to hear more and more stories of this happen is, the first is how readily available it is. And the second is because these apps know the day it happens. There doesn't take some long investigation and sting operations as they had to do with the poker games that Chauncey Billups was helping rig. We knew, or the FBI and DraftKings knew, that Terry Rozier did something illegal, did something shady the day it happened. Here in Cincinnati, a couple years ago, if you recall this college baseball game, someone walked into Great American Ballpark where there used to be a sportsbook, BetMGM, which is now moved across the street, walked in there with 6 figures of cash and put it on an LSU, Alabama, I believe, baseball game, which immediately, because it's regulated, because they have computers and they got to take every bet, immediately raised an alarm because they're saying, wow, we don't have $1,000 on this game anywhere across our books, and someone wants to put 6 figures on this college baseball game? We have $250 across all the users for Terry Rozier's under and rebounds, and someone wants to put 10 grand on it? That raises red flags. And it, because of regulation, because of it's legalized, we are seeing now, we are catching these guys quicker than ever, which is a good thing. And as I mentioned earlier, the knee-jerk reaction is, just make it illegal, just make it illegal. As we've seen across this great nation, the United States, for the past however long we've been a country, 250 years, we have seen that prohibition does not work when it comes to vices. It hasn't worked for drugs, the war against drugs. It didn't work against alcohol. It didn't work against gambling. So people are going to partake in those vices. It's going to happen. It'd be better off to oversee it to make sure that it's on the up and up as most as possible. And it's pretty clear that it is beneficial for all of these organizations, all these sports, that getting in bed with these sports companies is going to, in turn, create better products, create more money. We're going to get better facility. We're going to have newer stadiums. We're going to have more money for the players because there's going to be more money going into these leagues. I get optically bad when we tell these athletes, hey, do not gamble on sports. Do not gamble on your own sport. Meanwhile, DraftKings is going to sponsor the halftime show of NBA on ESPN. I understand that looks bad. But I will also say, and maybe this is a bad take, I'll open up the floodgates on this one, that I don't think it's overly hypocritical of these sporting books or these sports to take money from sports books. I don't think it's hypocritical in the same way that I don't think that them taking money from Budweiser or Coors or Miller or Jack Daniels and Jim Beam, Buffalo Trace, taking money from alcohol companies is the same, is not inviting people to say, oh yeah, and also you should drink and drive. There are rules. It is legal to gamble. And if you are an NFL player, feel free to gamble at a local casino. Feel free to gamble on, I don't know the NFL's bylaws, but I know in like the MLB, you can bet on other sports. You just can't bet on baseball. Like there are very clear guardrails. Do not do this. And if you do this, there will be harsh punishment. You'll be banned from the league. You'll be kicked out of the league for several years. You will go to jail. There is harsh punishment. I don't think there's gray area. It is pretty clear you do not do this. In the same way that as they take money from alcohol companies, they go, hey, do not drink a bunch of our product and then get behind a vehicle and drive home, or you will go to jail. You will be stripped of your right to play in this league for a period of time. Stone, as I welcome you in here, first I'll ask you this. Do you find it hypocritical that sports take money from sports gambling? Like, do you think it's hypocritical that the NFL gets in bed with DraftKings or FanDuel? Do you find that hypocritical? While also asking their players not to gamble on the sport.
Yeah, It's tough. It's a slippery slope. I don't have an issue with it. I agree with you. I think it's just kind of, and we were talking about this off the air. It's like stuff is going to happen. Do you want it to be regulated or not? And I think being regulated, that's clearly the best way to do it. There's going to be some flaws when all this, became legal. And a couple of weeks ago, you got the college kids that are now allowed to bet, and that just kind of opens up a whole new avenue to this thing there as well. So this was going to happen. I'm sure it's something that these leagues have had to deal with, not publicly over the past few years, and now all of a sudden you have these, things that have gone public, and it's a real issue, like, particularly in the NBA right now. But I don't have a problem with it, right? Like you just have to know what you're doing. You got to be responsible. One of the things about being a pro athlete, you got to understand that you can't do some of the stuff that the fans get.
Correct.
To do, and you get to get paid pretty handsomely for it. So I don't have an issue with it. Obviously, lots of decisions need to be made. I mean, I wouldn't want to be Adam Silver right now. It's a tough spot to be in, but I don't find it hypocritical.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is, first off, when it comes to basketball is clearly the easiest team sport to rig. Obviously, if you're a tennis player, you can rig that pretty easily. But basketball, above all else, is the easiest sport to rig, and that's why we'll continue to see it in basketball, to where you see these ninth guys off the bench, so they see their prop line and be like, I don't know, I'm making $500,000 or $1 million. Why don't I, have my buddy put $25,000 on my under or my over, and I'll just take every shot I take. I get when I get in the game. But you brought up a really good point. There's privileges of being a professional athlete. When you make Major League Baseball, when you make the National Football League, when you make the National Basketball Association, when you are a pro basketball player, you are going to garner fame. You are going to garner a lot of money. You're going to be at the pinnacle of what you've attempted to achieve your entire life. And there are trade-offs with that. One of them being is you don't have the same freedoms as everyone else in the far that, hey, I can't gamble on basketball. I can't do it. I'm not allowed to do it. Or I risk losing this. I mean, there's all sorts of privileges that come with it. Like, hey, when you become Joe Flacco here in Cincinnati, you're not going to be able to go out to dinner by yourself casually. Like Joe Burrow can't go out to dinner without people hawking him down. That's one of the downfalls of being famous and being a professional athlete. But it comes with the territory, and you know that that's what it is when you go into that sport. So it's a privilege that, hey, I get to play this professional sport. I'm going to make a lot of money. Generational wealth for playing the sport that I've been God-given and trained my entire life to do. And the trade-off is I simply cannot do this. I cannot rig these games. I cannot gamble on the sport that I'm playing. I cannot do this, or I risk losing it all. And that's where these stories come out, and you're just like, what are you doing? Like, Terry Rozier, you made $100 million in your career. Why are you trying to win your buddy some extra money? Why are you trying to win? I don't know the details specifically. Why are you trying to win $25,000 on, your over on turnovers for your friend? It doesn't make any sense. But yeah, Stone makes a really good point that there are privileges that come with this. And everyone I saw in the chat, someone, I think it was Everett, said that these aren't apple to apple comparisons. I get that they're not apple to apples. I get that there's things, but the point was, just because one sport is taking money from a company doesn't mean that it changes the conduct of the players. Like, you have a very specific, it's not a gray area, it's pretty black and white. You do not do this. You do not partake in anything regarding to this, or you risk losing it all. And we're going to continue to see, because these sports and these sports betting companies are now have a shared interest. And it is catching anyone that is trying to rig these athletic events. They have a shared interest. Sports books don't want to lose money, and the sports want to make sure that their games are on the up and up and they don't turn into WWE. Perhaps a better question when talking about all this, Stone, is do you think that there is going to be a loss of trust when it comes to these sports? Do you think that people are going to turn their back on the NBA now going, no, this thing's all rigged. I ain't going to watch your product anymore?
My gut says no. Again, Silver, all these guys, they have their handful right now. But, I mean, things are going to go on. Things are going to continue, right? When star players get hurt in a league, right, for instance, Joe Burrow right now, I mean, the world doesn't stop. They keep going, right? And there's some controversy now, and there's, there's some people that aren't going to trust it, but mind you, there's been people for years that are saying the NFL is rigged, and their ratings just keep going up and up and up each and every year. So I get more people are going to be concerned, more people that maybe weren't paying attention to this previously are going to be paying attention to it. But I think all these leagues will still be fine. It's, professional sports here in America. They make a lot of money, obviously none more than the NFL, and I think that will continue. But there's going to be some people that lack trust. But as far as, significantly hurting the ratings of some of these sports, I find that hard to believe here at this point. But we'll see, if there's more things that pop up. And also, I think if maybe there's more of a star that this happens with, that could certainly, like Terry Rozier, he's a good player. He's been in the league for a long time. Right. Well, yeah, true. But like if it's a mega star, I know LeBron, like he's not involved, but like someone once tipped off that he wasn't going to be playing or whatever. But if it was him doing it, maybe that's a little bit different. But if it's a guy like Terry Rozier or the coach of Portland, right? The franchise that if you had to pick one that nobody really cares
Chauncey
about.
Billups is a big name. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer.
One of the best players of all time, top 75 player of all time. I understand that, but if maybe some more stars find themselves in controversy, maybe. But overall, I think. It's an issue for these leagues, but they're going to keep pushing forward, and I don't think there's going to be a drastic change.
So then let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
While we're talking about sports gambling, and I think this is in Ohio, here in Ohio, I forget if it was last year or the year prior, it obviously became legal. What was it, the start of 2022? So we've been with it now for 3 years. Maybe it was the start of 2023. Pretty quickly, we outlawed something here in the state that is legal in other states. You can go, I believe, to Kentucky. I believe you can go to Indiana, and you can bet on college prop lines. What is your opinion on Ohio making that illegal? You can no longer bet on, a basketball player's total in points. You can no longer bet on the first touchdown scorer of the Ohio State game. You can no longer bet on Julian Sains to throw 2 touchdowns. Like, what is your opinion on the outlawing of collegiate prop lines?
Yeah, I mean, this is a whole different conversation, what I'm about to say. I think it's weird that, it's a state-by-state thing, personally. Like, you can go in some states, you can gamble, some you can't. Some you can bet on prop lines, some you can't. I think that's kind of weird, to be honest with you. But that's a whole different conversation. But, yeah, with these college athletes, I personally don't think you should – I mean, they've got enough on their plate. I get, we mentioned this off air. They're making hundreds of thousands of dollars these days. But, to have prop lines with them, I just think – I mean, these are kids, right? I mean, they're 18, 19, 20-year-old kids.
I agree.
And there's – no reason that, they should be involved with the prop stuff. I just think it's weird that in some states it's fine and then in others it's not. Like, I get it's a state-by-state thing, but I personally would get rid of all that.
Yeah, you go to different states and they all different types of gambling laws. Like in West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, you can go in there in the same apps that you can bet on sports. You can, pull up roulette. You can pull up blackjack and you can play right from your phone with real money and answers. And thank God we don't have that here in Ohio, because it's too tempting. Too tempting. But I'm with you that I was in favor of eliminating college prop lines because these kids, I know they're professional athletes now because they're getting paid $1 million or hundreds of thousands of dollars to play the sport, but they're still going to class. They're still living on campus. They're still doing all these things to where they are still kids. Like, they're still 18 to 22-year-olds. Some are older, to where the last thing that they need, as their brain's still developing and they're playing the pinnacle of these sports, is to worry about someone getting on them for blowing a parlay. Like, that's not fair to those kids, and it feels like a decent surrendering. It feels like a decent surrendering in our rights as non-athletes to say, like, all right, we won't bet on college props. That seems fair for the safety of these kids. Because there will be, when we're talking about games being rigged, there will be at some point, and I'm here to warn you, there will be at some point some sort of violent attack towards a college athlete because of a prop line, because of gambling. That will happen. Pray it doesn't, but it seems, just knowing humankind, knowing mankind, that will happen. So it seems like a fair thing to surrender, be like, all right, here in Ohio, we're not going to do it. And I'm with you that there probably needs to be federal regulation, not just state-by-state regulation. And I started off this rant by saying this will continue to happen. We will hear more and more about it. and baseball and football and basketball about people working with their prop lines, knowing that they can directly influence them. So you start wondering, how can we, even though we have regulation, we're gonna continue to have sports gambling. The genie's out of the bottle. It's not going back. How can we protect our sports, our athletes, and everything, the integrity of this all? And this will never happen. But a easy way that you can do this is by eliminating prop lines, period. Eliminating the ability for player-to-player betting. It'd be incredibly unpopular, and the sports books will never do it because that's how they make most of their money. But if you eliminate, hey, you can no longer bet. You want to bet on the game, you can bet on the totals, you can bet on the game, and we'll leave it at that. Kind of the old school way. When you used to have to call into the local bar and the local bookkeeper, like, hey, what's the spread on this? All right, give me some action on that. If you eliminate the player props, then you eliminate the incentive for these players to go like, hey, I know Cooper Flagg. I went to high school with him. You think if I text him and like, hey, can you not score 28 tonight? Can you not do that? I'm going to throw some big money on it. You eliminate that. It'll never happen. So, okay, if it's never going to happen, why don't we eliminate, if we're going to have player props, why don't we eliminate two-way betting? And by two-way betting, I'm saying that right now the sports books take action. If you want to bet on Shohei Ohtani to hit a home run tonight, you can bet on the over, him to hit one, or you can bet on him not to hit one. If you want to bet on Joe Flacco's touchdowns, you can say, I want him to go over 2 touchdowns or I want him to go under 2 touchdowns. That's two-way betting. What if we eliminated the negative outcomes? We've seen this in some states. We've seen you cannot bet on an interception, on a player to throw an interception. You cannot bet on an under 8 points. You cannot bet on an under 84 rushing yards. You eliminate the negative to where, hey, I mean, if you want to bet on yourself to get 28 points, it's a little bit hard. It's a little bit harder to do than, all right, my line's 28 points. I'll go under today. You can't negatively affect that. I think you can take a lot of it away by just eliminating two-way betting. And the reason that this would be bad for the gambler, by the way, because two-way lines at least put a little bit of safety nets for the gambler, because normally your lines are way worse when there is no bottom half, when there is no under betting, because they can mess with the lines however you want. Your thoughts on taking away unders on player props?
I've heard people mention this before. It is interesting. I just, that's how, I mean, Vegas makes a ton of money on that there as well. They make a ton on the player props. I think you got to keep the unders, right? I mean, over under, that's kind of been a thing in betting for a long time. And I know you mean specifically with the player props. Yeah. But
two-way betting specifically is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting take. I think, as far as player props go, I think at the professional level, they're going to stay overs and unders, and that's just they're going to have to find a way to, I mean, all these players in all these leagues understand, like, they are briefed going into the year. They're briefed in the offseason, especially this day and age, that, you can't do this. Like, it's very clear. Like,
it's not a gray area. That's the
right.
thing.
Yes, exactly. So it's an interesting point. I think if you're going to leave player props, you got to have the under option. If you want to eliminate that completely, okay, but then the books aren't going to sign off on that, as you said. So it's a slippery slope.
I think the books would actually sign off.
You think so?
On unders, because then because most people bet overs anyways.
Right.
Most people bet overs, so the unders are really actually a guardrail for the gambler. Because it allows the option. If you listen to sharp bettors, if you listen to professional bettors, more often than not, they take the underdog and they take the unders on lines, because the great majority of money is sit on overs, is sit on the favorites. It's all the above.
Yeah.
So that's why it's normally set up as sort of a guardrail for bettors. But it feels like, once again, another way is like, all right, if we could take away if we know these player props. But the point of this conversation that I wanted to start is we are going to continue to hear this. We are going to hear stories, and it is just the brave new world that we have entered. And it is ultimately better that there are guardrails and there are institutions that are overseeing all of this. There are institutions that know, hey, we just took a lot of money for Andre Yoshivas's total receptions. where across DraftKings Sportsbook we have $5,000 on Andre Yoshivas's total receptions. Someone just put in $50,000. Okay, who's the account belong to? It belonged to this person who lived in Andre Yoshivas's hometown. That's good things. That's a way that we are going to catch this. And the reason we're going to hear more of it is just because it's more readily available. Who knows how many games have been rigged over the years when the Mafia was running sports gambling? Who knows? But now we will have a better understanding of what happens, when it happens, and we'll be able to better police it. I think it's better. I think it's better for the sports. I think it's better for us as people who like to gamble, people who enjoy sports. It's better all the way around. The final thing is I don't think it's hypocritical for sports to take money from sports gambling companies because it's clear that they are in unison. They're both trying to make more money here in America.